Hey guys, welcome back. You can see we're not in the shop right now because the heater went out. Yes, the heater that I just put in it. So we're filming this in front of the Christmas tree, but that's okay because it's kind of Christmas themed. Back when I was a little kid, my dad made me this sled, and now that I've got two boys of my own, I figured I better make a duplicate of it so that they can each have their own. So let's see how I did that. The process started with taking some close measurements of the original sled and sketching out the pieces. I decided I wanted to use my X-Carve to cut out the different parts, so my next step was to draw everything to scale in Adobe Illustrator. Now you certainly don't need a CNC machine to do this. My dad definitely didn't need one back when he built the original, so you could easily get all the pieces cut out using a bandsaw or a jigsaw. Using the X-Carve created its own set of challenges, which is exactly what I was looking for. The most obvious one is that my X-Carve has a cutting surface of roughly 30 by 30 inches, and the overall length of this sled is 44 inches, so I had to come up with a way to split the runners into two pieces that could be glued together later. After 3 different versions and testing on some scrap wood, I came up with a funny-looking dovetail joint that I was happy with. So I squared up several pieces of rough white oak to match the original sled and set the X-Carve to work. While the CNC machine kept working in the other room, I could take the finished pieces to my bench and cut the tabs and fine-tune some of the edges. Well, we had a little bit of a malfunction. Unfortunately, during the last pass with the X-Carve cutting out the seat or the top to the sled, the tabs actually broke and the whole piece jumped a little bit, and I took a great big gouge out of it. I was standing not right there, but close enough by that I was able to slap the panic button and get it to shut down before it got any worse. And it was going to try to just run right through the middle of this thing. So this is very unfortunate because this was actually the exact shape that I wanted it to be. But that's okay, we can get away with fixing this and no one else will know the difference. I took and put a radius on each corner using just a 5-gallon bucket and set it down on top of there and kind of curve those two out. So I'm going to go to the bandsaw to cut those little ears off now and hide this problem forever. In the file that I'll have available, the full shape will still be there. What I learned from this is that my oak is fairly brittle when it gets that thin, and I always knew that, and I had extra tabs built into this, but what I didn't think about was the thickness of the tabs. So in the project file, I'm going to make those tabs thicker also so that there is some real substance holding this in place for that last pass so it doesn't jump loose on anybody else. To glue the runners together, I put a straight edge in my bench vise to create a fence and put some blue tape down on my workbench that was a little bigger than the joint. I spread the glue over all the faces of the dovetails, then put the pieces together like a simple puzzle. The joint was very accurate coming off the CNC machine, but to be doubly sure that the bottom of the runners would be straight, I clamped the pieces to the fence that I had set up. Then I used another clamp and the hand-hold cutouts to pull the pieces together while the glue dried. What are you doing? Huh? What are you doing? You know, your ears are so big they cover your eyeballs. What is this about? You look silly. Oh, hi. Oh, hi. Oh, great. Now we're gonna have to censor the video. You can't flash the whole internet, Flint. Alright, alright. Yeah, you goofy dog. You goofy dog. Huh? I gave the runners a light pass through my drum sander just to clean any dried glue off the faces so I could take a closer look at how the joint came out. It turned out nice and strong, but there were a few small gaps. I put a little bit of thick CA glue in the gaps to fill them, then sprinkled on some sawdust and rubbed it in to hide it. Here you can see that I used a chisel to square the corners of these holes. The 1/4-inch bit from the CNC machine left slightly radiused corners, and I chose to square these rather than round over the ends of the cross pieces. I used the bandsaw to remove the radius on the inside corner of the cross pieces as well. With all of the pieces tuned up, I ran them through the drum sander to make them exactly 3/4 of an inch thick and smooth to 220 grit. I added a slight bevel to the ends of each cross piece to give them a decorative look that matched the original sled. Then I used a small roundover bit to soften the top edges of the runners, the handhold cutouts, and the front and back edges of the seat. The last step before assembly was to drill holes for the front handle. I'd planned to do this with the X-Carve during the initial cutout, but the boards I'm using have one side that is much prettier than the other, and I wanted to make sure that the best side was facing out. So I waited until this point to make that call, but the project file linked below will have these holes already in place. There's no glue in putting the pieces together initially. I just dry fit everything together and clamped it down. Then I marked and drilled holes through the top of the seat into each cross piece and through the sides of the runners into the cross pieces as well. Then I put glue into all the holes and tapped in dowels. To anybody out there that's thinking, but what about wood expansion? Your sled's just going to rip itself apart. To that I say, I don't know, maybe. Just know that that very thought crossed my mind and I decided to see what happened if I just ignored it. Looking at the original sled my dad made for me, it's only held together with screws in these exact same locations. No glue whatsoever. And it's held up for more than 20 years. With the glue dry, I used a flush trim saw to cut the dowels even with the yoke, then sanded them smooth. Finally, I hung the sled from the ceiling and hit it with a healthy coat of satin polyurethane to finish it off. Well, there we have it, guys. Got my old sled and the new version, and I'm really happy with how this came out. I kind of like the contrast of grain between the bottom and the top of the runner here, so you can really see that sort of puzzle piece in there. There's a little bit of a different design where mine has handles in it, and the original has kind of a straight cut where all those cross pieces went through. But all in all, I'm really happy with it. I hope my boys don't fight over who gets what. I hope they can kind of come to an agreement and have sort of an heirloom for themselves. Let's see, housekeeping stuff. All of the usual links are going to be down in the description. You can go see the X-Carve stuff. You can go to my Amazon store and see all the tools that I would have used in this. The link to the easel file so you could cut one out yourself. It might be worth looking at, even if you don't have an X-Carve, it could be worthwhile to go get an easel account and look at this project, because you can get the design, the shape, the size of this whole thing from that. Because, you know, I didn't make plans, I just drew it up in that program, so I'm not going to have plans available other than that. Unfortunately, we don't actually have any snow around here right now, so I can't take my kids out and get some fancy footage of them enjoying the sleds. One of these days we'll do that, but I guess for now I'm rambling, I'm done. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Merry Christmas, we'll see you next time.